Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months.
Kyoto Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, we're almost there, baby. A few short weeks away from kickoff in the regular season. Getting ready to close the book on the preseason. You know what? A pretty great preseason it has been. I do think a lot of Chargers fans would agree to that. The offense is looking fantastic. Defense is making some improvements. As far as the preseason games go, I think week 1, fantastic. Great preview what the offense could look like. Week 2, maybe a little bit of a letdown, but we didn't have to wait long for week 3. Week 3 coming up tomorrow, Friday, at the San Francisco 49ers. The Chargers will have, and a lot of its depth players, I have to say. I think the Chargers' depth is a big point of conversation this offseason. Last chance to make an impression, hopefully make the roster for some of these guys, and even expanding their roles going into the regular season. This is it. This is for all the marbles, and I do think with this particular opponent, it is not going to come easy. So we're going to break down what I think is going to happen in the San Francisco 49ers matchup for the Chargers, as well as highlight some of the players who really need to go out with a bang in the preseason to help their chances in making the 53. Now, before we do kick off, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, of course, the best fantasy platform on the web. If you guys want to get in on the action, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. And it is a great time to jump in, get your feet wet in the preseason before the regular season kicks off, as well as take advantage of deals like this. New follower special. If you guys want to jump over to X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, follow them at Underdog. You can get this Aaron Rodgers. If anybody thinks that Aaron Rodgers throws for over half a fantasy point, this is pretty much a free entry right there. Definitely help out your chances for this Saturday's game. Now, before we do kick off, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's jump into it. Lights, camera,
Action!
Your Chargers at San Francisco 49ers game preview for week 3 of the preseason. Now, I think the first thing I'm going to be asked about a lot for this game is, Director, are we going to see any Justin Herbert in this game or any of the starters? Well, for reference, I don't think so. If you guys want to take a look at some of the stats from last season, actually, let's go ahead and put this stat here in the middle for you guys. Last season, the Chargers' very last preseason game. Okay, of course, we did play the Saints again this season. Last season, you will notice that we did not see a Justin Herbert. It was all Chase Daniel, Easton Stick, as well as the rest of the team seemed to be mainly backups, depth positions, and stuff like that. So I wouldn't expect too much in terms of the starters, if anything at all. So with that kind of put aside, I wanted to start picking around some names that I do think we're going to see some action from this week. Topics of players I think are fighting for extra playing time, fighting for a spot on the roster. Let's go ahead and kick things off. I think at the most important position this week, quarterback, featuring Max Duggan. Now, of course, if we do, and I do think there's a good chance, I think there's a solid chance that we still see, let's say, a first half for Easton Stick. If we do see Easton Stick for a majority of this game again, this is going to be a pretty big test for him. A bounce back from last week, of course, the Chargers, and Easton Stick in particular, kind of getting walloped by the Saints. It would be a good opportunity for him to put that behind him, get back on the field, focus on this opponent versus the San Francisco 49ers, and get to work. And for Chargers fans, it would definitely be an opportunity for Easton Stick to win back our trust. After week 1, a lot of us had a lot of faith. Week 2 definitely shook that faith for a lot of Bull fam. Now, the reason we have Max Duggan listed here at quarterback as far as our topic here is because I do think there's a decent chance that maybe, just maybe, the Chargers roll out with Max Duggan and see what he's got for a full game. Of course, I don't think a lot of us expected Easton Stick to be the quarterback for the entirety of week 2 in the preseason. It gave the Chargers a lot of tape, a lot of things to look at, especially Easton Stick in terms of what he needs to improve. Maybe they want to give Max Duggan the same treatment. And I think it would be interesting for the Chargers and its fans to see, considering that, of course, he's going to have some time with two of his weapons from TCU and Darius Davis and, of course, Quentin Johnson. How is that going to sync for a full game? Might be an advantage in terms of the passing game for this quarterback, at least. So let me know what you guys think of the QB2 battle. I know it's not the most interesting narrative out there in the preseason, but it certainly is one of them, because as of right now, I think a lot of us still believe Easton Stick is our QB2. I certainly do believe that, but maybe a miracle game by Max Duggan could shake that opinion for a lot of Chargers fans, and maybe even the Chargers themselves. Next up, moving to the next topic, of course, Quentin Johnson, who has been active for at least a drive or two, sometimes a half in the previous 2 preseason games. Chargers fans very excited to see this man out there if he does take the field. Of course, the Chargers could be precautious in terms of their starters. I think they've already listed Quentin Johnson as a starter. Outside of that, though, I do think that there's a good chance we'll see him out there. Hopefully, a couple of snaps with Max Duggan. Now, what we need to see from a Quentin Johnson in this game is just continuing the narrative of fixing the catching situation, at least the faith in the catching situation for Quentin Johnson. Week 1, a couple of drops, shook the Chargers fans just a little bit. Week 2 really did clean up those drops. I don't think we saw a single one, and a couple of really, difficult catches for Quentin Johnson that he was able to come down with. Week 3, if we can see, again, no drops, maybe a little bit more in terms of getting open, who knows, another touchdown, I think that would help his chances quite a bit at snagging more snaps during the regular season. I know it's going to be weird with him and Josh Palmer probably like switching in and out for the most part, but Quentin Johnson, the more that we understand how the Chargers want to use him, the more we'll understand how he'll be utilized, especially versus specific opponents. Chargers versus the Miami Dolphins week 1. I think that could be a really good matchup for Quentin Johnson, considering the Dolphins' top 2 DBs are going to have their hands full with Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. All right, so that speed could definitely come into terms. And I do want to see Quentin Johnson show off a little bit more of that speed. I've seen way more of it in camp than I have in the preseason games. I want to see it come to light in week 3 versus the Niners. Next up, next topic. Of course, I wanted to show you guys one nice catch from Camp 2 just this last week. I do think we're going to see something nice from QJ. Next topic. Let's talk about the other wide receivers, okay? We'll talk about a few other wide receivers. I'm saving one for a separate topic. Here you're seeing Keelan Doss. I think we're going to talk a little bit about John Hightower in just a second. But for this one, let's go Keelan Doss. Let's go Pokey Wilson. Let's go Milton Wright. Those guys, right? There's going to be basically one more game and opportunity for these guys to stand out. I think among these guys, Keelan Doss does feel like the most reliable from what we've seen in the preseason. The man's getting open, doesn't have the craziest speed, but he is very much so available for his quarterback, and he's looked pretty good. Pokey Wilson, Milton Wright, Darius Shepard, these guys haven't seen much time, and it's starting to give us a clear picture of what the depth chart could look like as they start whittling down with cuts. I do view Keelan Doss, Pokey, these guys more as training camp, or not just training camp, but practice squad kind of guys. This game, if we do see a miracle, if we do see a crazy effort by, let's say, a Keelan Doss, etc., it might help their chances at climbing just above that. But still, those are some names to look out for. They're really going to have to put on a huge game to impress the coaches enough to make that kind of difference. Next topic here, let's talk about, okay, the wide receiver we're saving a separate segment for, Darius Davis. I cannot tell you guys how excited I am to think about what Darius Davis could become to the Chargers over the course of this season, okay? And I think honestly the needle has already started to move for Darius Davis in the preseason, just given the previous 2 games. Now, of course, he did have the one muffed punt return or kick return. That definitely is going to be something he's got to clean up. But outside of that, especially on the terms of him as a wide receiver, he's been absolutely fantastic. I put out a tweet a couple of days ago. Actually, I'm going to go find it real quick for you guys. I think it's worth pointing out here because it really is something that's quite impressive when you're thinking about somebody like Darius Davis on this team. Now, I did post here, Darius Davis could be the real deal. He's just 5 for 5, 45 yards in the preseason. But in those moments, he's displayed speed, hands, crisp route running, toughness, and yak ability. Maybe I'm overblowing it, but my gut says otherwise. And honestly, I don't think my opinion has changed on Darius Davis since then. 5 targets, 5 catches, 45 yards. In those, again, different examples of different skill sets for the wide receiver position. He's really knocked my socks off. And I think with a solid game versus the Niners, the Chargers may just look at this player and say, hey, dude, that speed, it's something we want to get more involved. It seems that he's more than just the speed. He's got the hands. He's got the yak ability. He's got the route running. Let's mix in some plays, man. And it could be reminiscent of Tyreek Hill's rookie season, if you guys remember. They started running him, in these gadget plays quite a bit, swings and a handoff directly to the wide receiver, et cetera, et cetera. It really felt like maybe Tyreek was more than what they had drafted him to be, and I think the Chargers kind of found a similar guy in Darius Davis that I think they would be wise to use this last preseason game as an opportunity to test some of that skill set out with the speed that Darius Davis does possess. So Darius Davis, if we can see, I would love to see 4 targets for him this game. Keep him in maybe a little bit more. I know there's a bit of a risk because he certainly is our starting returner, but I also think the gamble in terms of finding out what he really is at a receiver is worth it at this point, because he is definitely more than I thought he would be, and I think the coaching staff is very close to pushing his name over the edge for more playing time. So big game from him, I think, would definitely go a long way. Next up, let's talk a little bit about Jasir Taylor. Now, again, narrative at the top of the season, Jasir Taylor, this man's amazing. He's starting to push for, Asante Samuel's starting slot, snaps. I think that was a whole bunch of bluey. But I also think that there's a good chance that with another good game, Jasir Taylor, who does need a bit of a bounce back, he has been looking a little bit lost in coverage, but with a good game here versus the Niners, I think that, in my opinion, we'll see him rotate in at nickel every once in a while, especially if the Chargers feel like they need a little bit of extra firepower versus the run. Jasir Taylor's looked more than capable, especially for a late-round pick from the Chargers last season. Again, a big game from him. Couple tackles here and there, especially versus the running back. If he can show that stopping power, I feel like the Chargers will have more solidified faith in his ability when they call upon him in the regular season. So Jasir Taylor, look for number 36, especially versus the run. Next up, I think this is number 88. I apologize if we're reading it wrong. But we're going to focus in a little bit on Trey McCoy, okay? Now, the Chargers tight end situation, I would say outside of Gerald Everett, maybe hasn't been the best. I forget who posted. Someone posted an article from the top 100 tight ends in the league, and the Chargers outside of Gerald Everett, none of them made it. I think there was a guy at 108, 120, 125, something like that. The depth at tight end has not been great, and I think the Chargers are starting to move things around a little bit, and I think guys like Trey McCoy, their jobs could be in jeopardy. I think the only reason Trey McCoy is sort of on the roster right now is because of his blocking ability, which I don't know if it's going to be enough at this point. You got guys like Stone Smart, who has kind of been a standout the last couple of weeks at tight end, certainly as a receiver. You got Michael Ezekiel, I forget how to say his last name, but the guy out of UCLA, he's also shown some flashes here and there. Keep an eye on the tight ends, specifically your depth guys with like Trey McCoy, like Hunter Campenmoyer, like Donald Parham. These guys, I think that position could get shaken up with a good game from one of these guys. And if I were putting my money on one guy right now, as crazy it is to say, because I do think Donald Parham should be tight end 2 of this team, I think the guy to look out for is Stone Smart. He really has been shining the last couple of weeks, and I think it's a position that could see some movement due to the results of Friday's game. All right. Next topic. We're talking a little bit about running back. Okay, first off, we see Isaiah Spiller here, okay? But I actually wanted to start off with a different player when showing the running backs in Elijah Dotson. Okay, Elijah Dotson capturing the hearts and the imagination of Chargers fans around the world. Had a great week 1. Maybe cost the Chargers a game or a win in week 2 with a couple of drop passes late in the fourth quarter. That kind of shook the faith in the Chargers fan community just a little bit. But again, week 3 of the preseason could be a chance for redemption. And I think Elijah Dotson, the ability in terms of his short area quickness, his agility, his ability to cut to the outside and turn on the jets, I think that is a valuable asset for the Chargers if he's able to prove that he can tune into that again in week 3. Might it be too late? Maybe, but I think at very worst, we're looking at a very solid practice squad member. Now, for the other 2 guys in Joshua Kelly and Isaiah Spiller, I think these guys, once again, they're at this point, I feel like they're fighting to find their roles, right? And I think at this point, what I'm seeing from both of these backs is more of like a power back kind of style play from Joshua Kelly, and maybe more of a receiving back / I don't know, one cut, a little bit of an elusive back kind of guy out of Isaiah Spiller. And I think seeing plenty of playing time for both of these guys, without a doubt, at least the first half of this game, should help me better understand what I think they're going to be in the regular season. Both of them obviously backups to Austin Eckler, but I think defining their roles will also give the Chargers and its fans a better understanding of what they're going to be going into the future. All right, so running back, that'll be an important one. Next up, Dan Henley and the middle linebackers, actually. Been a couple of guys out there. I think Lynch may have gone down with an injury last week. I do not remember, but the middle linebacker position actually in a better spot than me and a lot of Chargers fans had thought from the top of the season. Now, of course, we haven't seen any Eric Kendricks so far. I have full faith that he's going to be awesome. Dan Henley, though, I was just talking to a buddy about this just a couple of days ago. I think there's an opportunity for Dan Henley to get more reps, maybe at a sub, package or in coverage looks, et cetera, because of what he's done in the preseason than maybe what they were planning on giving him in his rookie year initially. And what I mean by that is if Dan Henley can go out there and have a pretty good game this week, I think he's had 2 very solid games so far leading up to it. I think if he can continue on with that on Friday, that he's earned more playing time, that the Chargers maybe feel better about him in coverage than, let's say, a Kenneth Murray at this point. And I think over time, we're going to see more opportunity for Dan Henley as the year goes on. I'm saying like maybe halfway through the season, we do see more of Dan Henley at middle linebacker 2 than maybe a 3 guy. So keep an eye on Dan Henley. I think another great day by him. And what I need out of a great day is just kind of taking a look at that speed. They call him the Ranger. He's able to go sideline to sideline pretty efficiently. He's got very nice quickness, and he follows the running back very well when asked to cover, even in zone coverage in the middle of the field. You just got to look out for stuff like coverage and look out for stuff in terms of cleaning up plays, tackling running back, et cetera. I think we're going to look at a pretty good opportunity for Dan Henley to ensure he's got more snaps this season by another good performance here. All right. Next up, last couple before we start wrapping up. Of course, this is an interesting one, and I'm giving him his own segment because I do think it's very important. John Hightower was a preseason and I would say practice darling for a lot of Chargers fans and the team, right? He's got the quickness. He's got the hands. He's got the route running. He's been a deep threat. He's been an over-the-middle threat. He's been an intermediate threat. It feels like he's been the guy, right? And unfortunately, the one opportunity that we saw for him to get on the field in a live game environment was this last week versus the Saints, and that did not pan out very well for John Hightower. Before we start writing off number 84, I would like to see one more opportunity, a solid opportunity for John Hightower to turn some heads versus the Niners. And I do think that there's going to be a good opportunity for that this week. We just got to see this man get open a little bit more efficiently. If there's one thing I will say that was definitely on him last week, even though he was getting thrown with double and triple coverage on him sometimes, it's that he needs to get open a little bit more efficiently for his quarterback. And I think that's something he's shown he's capable of. Let's see if he can put on a show on Friday. John Hightower. All right. Next up, JT Woods. You guys know my feelings on JT Woods. I think I've seen improvement week after week in camp, week after week in preseason. Now it's time to shine, man. I need an interception this week from JT Woods. Let's go ahead and solidify our feelings on the young DB with a big play from big play from defense, and I think he's absolutely capable of it. Every single week, his positioning has been better to me. Every single week, his coverage ability has been better to me. His play rec's has been a bit better to me. He's barely getting close in terms of breaking, on routes, et cetera. I want to see that version of JT from college turn its head in this game and make a big play. And I have a feeling that him and Dean Leonard are cooking up something fun for this game. But again, very important that the Chargers identify talent in that position, because there is a bit of shakeup in terms of, moving Alohi Gilman to free safety. We're probably going to see way more of JT Woods than a lot of us expect in that relief role for Derwin James. We've seen him playing in the box a lot too. I don't know, man. I got a feeling about JT this season. In terms of most improved player, I think 22 could shock a lot of people, and I think this game in particular could give us our best preview of that yet. It's a lot of pressure on JT, but I believe that he can pull it off, okay? Almost out of here, guys. Definitely keep an eye for Tuli Tuipulotu, man. Couple things we saw last week that knocked my socks off. Constant pressure. We've seen that in the first 2 preseason games, which has been fantastic. But his ability versus the run, my oh my. We got a trio of very nice edge defenders for the Chargers, maybe even 4 of them with Rumpf, especially versus the run as well. I think that's something that's just being added to like a cherry on top to the name of Tuli Tuipulotu. And if we can see more of that this week, if we can see a tackle for loss again, if we can see a sack if we can see 2 or 3 pressures in 1 or 2 drives, I don't know. I feel very good about 45 going into the season. He's a number to definitely look out for. Maybe the Chargers, maybe by having a good game this week, he does earn more snaps from the Chargers. He does earn more, work moving along the line. I know the Chargers like to move their guys a lot. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, left, right, doesn't matter. I like to see more of that from Tuipulotu as well. Let's see another big game from him, all right? And finally, a little bit about the Niners to kind of keep in mind for this game. We're likely going to see a lot of Trey Lance. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter or on X lately, but the big news out of Niners camp has been that Trey Lance likely has been demoted to QB3, with Sam Darnold earning QB2 responsibilities, and of course Brock Purdy, the quarterback 1 for San Francisco, which is absolutely insane to me how this whole story has unfolded. So in terms of its preseason game, expect a lot of Trey Lance, who again, as far as a depth quarterback, is very good. Okay, in terms of a preseason, quarterback, he's going to be one to watch out for. He's got weapons like Ronnie Bell, who had a great game last week. Watch out for him. And then Cameron Latu as well. And then on defense, they got some dogs out there that have been producing a lot of sacks. I think they had a couple of interceptions last week too. So watch out for the Niners. It's going to be a tough game. With that, what is my game prediction in terms of score for the Chargers at 49ers in week 3 of the preseason? I got the Chargers putting up 17, Niners 20. I do have the Chargers narrowly missing out on a win here, but I think more importantly, the Chargers do identify big talent from big players that could make a difference in the regular season, including why I'm putting back on the screen here, Darius Davis. Out of all of the preseason guys that I've seen, out of all of the early games that I've seen, I think in terms of players that are changing my mind on what they were to me before those games to what they are now, I think it's been Darius Davis, and I think one more game could push him over the edge to, hey, man, we got to work him into the system a little bit more before kickoff. So got to watch out for these guys. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Of course, we will be live for that game tomorrow on Friday. If you guys want to come out here on the channel, check us out. We'll be here with maybe, I'm hoping at least 500 Chargers fans, maybe more. And then, of course, if you guys want to check out my post-game reaction, that'll be over on Bleacher Report shortly after the game. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up, stay frosty, and let's go out there and put a touchdown up this week. What do we say, Darius Davis?